This is Tom Barbalet. I'm going to record a series of videos about the Noble Ape simulation, just as a means to kind of give people an overview. And this is the very basic overview just associated with the GUI, just so you get a sense of what's actually going on. So it's probably easiest just to pause the simulation. And this layer here, draw weather, you can turn it on and off. So I'll just give you a little overview of what you're seeing with the weather, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the landscape. So what you see here in this kind of lighter dot pattern is cloud cover, and in this denser dot pattern is rain. So, as I'll explain later, by holding down the Options key and clicking, you can actually move the Noble Ape. So here's the Noble Ape outside cloud cover. So you see bright starry night. Move the Noble Ape into cloud cover, you see the clouds represented, and move the Noble Ape into a rain area, and you'll see rainy night displayed there. So that's how to understand the weather interface. You can just move the ape around by holding down the Option key and just clicking down. So let's turn off the weather for the time being. We can turn off the brain as well, just to make it a little bit simpler. It turns off the 8 brain cycles per second. We'll talk a little bit more about the brain, potentially in this video, potentially in another video, depending on how long this one goes. So what I'm doing here is just selecting New, which creates a new island. And what you can see here is these are randomly created islands, so you can actually do it relatively quickly. There's a series of different islands. But when you see an island that represents, well, not an island, a landscape rather. When you see a landscape that represents the environment you want, this one has quite a bit of water, but the apes will create pathways anyway, so irrespective of the water, there's potential for apes to actually attempt to swim across here, and some may actually get across. But what you can see here are land pathways, basically, that the noble apes will probably wander along. And what will happen is that certain apes will stay in certain areas, and other apes will kind of venture through. But the landscape is relatively critical in the Noble Ape simulation as a way of kind of framing the societies that develop. So you can keep on, with it paused, you can keep on selecting New until you find the landscape that you like. For purpose here, we'll just use this landscape. And this is currently at night, so it's slightly darker. You can unpause it and just let the simulation, as you see, as it gets closer to dawn, it becomes slightly brighter, and then around dawn you actually have daylight starting, so dawn, daylight, and the apes begin to move over the environment. It gets progressively brighter through to about midday, where it's at the brightest. So we'll pause it in its bright state so I can give you an overview of the interactive part. So to start off with, as I noted, this window is interactive too. You can both select apes, which I'm doing here by just clicking on them, and also by holding down the Option key you can actually drag the ape to where your mouse is held down. So you can basically take a group of apes and rehome them to a particular space, which, yeah, it's a little slow, but you know, it's doable. This screen gives you slightly more interaction, so let's take an ape that we have rehomed. So here you have the ability not only to turn the landscape like this by just clicking on either side, and I'll turn the landscape. You also can move the ape forward and backwards by clicking forwards and backwards. This is the ape that you selected. And you'll notice in certain circumstances that this ape will become brighter, and then darker, and then brighter, and that just references that the ape that you selected, this particular ape here, can either see or not see that ape. So when it can see the ape, it goes bright red. When it can't see the ape, it's dark red. Let's talk a little bit about the cognitive simulation. So there are 3 kinds of brain simulation in Noble Ape. The first was the cognitive simulation, and this represents kind of reactive response associated with the noble apes. What you see here, which you probably can't really see in this graph, but I can because I'm kind of used to it, is that on this rotating face, which has just gone far, and then it's gone round, and it's come back, there are a series of sensors, which you can see because they're pushing information in, and also actuators. And what that means is that the sensors fire information into this brain, which you can rotate here. And what you're seeing in the brain clouds is the deltas, like the contour map, basically, of this this simulated brain. In addition to this, the no blatant simulation has a social simulation, which I'll explain more about with command line because it's easier to see. And there is also a language simulation, and you can see the language simulation component by selecting Draw Brain Code. Now this is relatively difficult to see here, it's really difficult to see in midday, but certainly through the command line you can actually get access to this brain code as well. So this ape isn't particularly interesting. Let's just unpause the ape. It's well, okay, let's unpause the ape as it is. That was turning relatively rapidly. So let's turn off the brain drawing part, and then let's just look at the brain code. So what's going on here, and again it's difficult to see with the kind of colouring as it is currently, is that this is the external language. So this is what the ape will say to another ape when they meet. And this is the internal language representing this ape specifically. There are other internal languages associated with the apes that it meets, but we'll get more into that with the command line. But what you're seeing here is that the external ape and the internal ape are having a dialogue basically, and are unifying in theory. Now what you can do through this is, because you can move between apes, and you do this either by going here and going previous and new, or you can just use the control keys, which are the square bracket keys, to either move backwards or forwards. So with this, you'll be able to find particular apes obviously advance their language a lot faster, so a lot of these apes are still relatively basic in terms of their language, but you'll have some apes, like this one for example, that will have various parts that will fire more frequently, and after running for about 10 simulated days, even more, maybe 20 ideally, you'll have actually quite rich languages that are communicating both with the internal and external, and also when they meet other apes. So just in terms of reading these various things, there are other maps, other icons here, and this one relates to time, and these early ones the smaller ones are date, and this relates to the speed that the ape is travelling. This is the energy that the ape contains. This is the maximum amount of energy it can contain. And this is the minimum where detriment is caused below that. This is the direction the ape is facing, so if we pause the simulation and rotate the ape, you can see the direction facing moving according to the rotation. So let's see, that's just once around there. And in addition, this is the genetics of the ape. So as you switch between apes, here again I'm just selecting next ape, you see that there are a number of female apes. The cross down indicates female, and the point up indicates male, which is the kind of standard biology description of male and female. And you can see the related genetics here. So this is pretty well as much as you can do with this interface. It's really designed to provide an overview of the simulation and also, you know, what the apes are doing in any particular situation, but purely in a kind of graphical representation, and obviously because they are fundamentally dots, they don't have bodies or anything like that you can see through this view of the simulation. It is limited in that regard, but people still choose, and currently with the 695 release it'll give the command line and the graphics and the GUI, which is what you're seeing currently, at the same time. In addition to this, there are things like opening ape script and things like that, but they're really more advanced. So we'll talk about those in a future video. But I just wanted to give the basic overview associated with the simulation. Apologies for my train of thought. It's a Friday evening and it's been a long week, so apologies for the various verbal flubs. I'll talk about the command line version through the GUI in the next video, and hopefully you'll have more fun there. Anyway, Tom Barbley in the Bay Area, signing out.